Hey there. I was just thinking about how weary life can make us all feel sometimes. You know what I mean? Just weighed down. But I want to remind you that you're not alone. We all go through these times. And that's actually what I wanted to dive into today. This idea of weariness and finding strength. We're going to be looking at the story of the prophet Elijah from the Bible, a man who faced some pretty intense stuff, but ultimately found a powerful source of strength to get through it all. You might be thinking, okay, a Bible story, how's that going to help me? Well, just stick with me for a sec, because I really believe Elijah's story. It's not just some ancient history, It's like a timeless mirror, reflecting the human experience, the feelings being overwhelmed, wanting to just give up, and then discovering this wellspring of strength we never knew we had. So let's talk about Elijah. Who was this guy? Well, he was a prophet, a man who spoke God's word to the people, and he lived in a time of total chaos and spiritual confusion. Sound familiar? He stood up to powerful kings, challenged the status quo, and even performed some incredible miracles. But even with all that, he wasn't superhuman. He was a man, just like you and me. He had his own struggles, went through periods of just deep despair and exhaustion. And there's this one part of his story that I find incredibly powerful. Elijah's on the run from his enemies, completely exhausted, physically and emotionally drained. He feels like he's given everything he has, but nothing's changed. He's just done, ready to throw in the towel and disappear. Have you ever felt that way? I know I have.
Yep.
So what does Elijah do? He goes to a cave, seeking refuge from the storms raging around him. He just wants to be alone, to hide from the world. And it's in that moment of utter despair that God meets him. Now, I want to pause here for a second, because this wasn't some dramatic Hollywood-style encounter. This was a quiet, gentle revelation. God didn't show up with thunder and lightning, demanding that Elijah get his act together. Instead, he met Elijah in his brokenness, offering him comfort, rest, and nourishment. And here's a detail that I find really profound. God provided water for Elijah to drink. We often underestimate the power of water. It's essential for life, right? It sustains us, cleanses us, refreshes us. And in the Bible, water often symbolizes spiritual renewal and restoration. So God was using that simple act of providing water to remind Elijah that he wasn't alone, that he was loved, and that he had the strength to keep going. But it goes even deeper than that. Think about where Elijah was. He was in a desert, a barren and unforgiving landscape. Water in the desert, it's precious. It represents hope, life in the face of death. And by giving Elijah water in that desolate place, God wasn't just quenching his physical thirst, he was revitalizing his spirit. It was a tangible sign that even in the driest, most hopeless circumstances, there's a source of strength and renewal available to us. Now, I know you might be facing your own desert right now, your own set of challenges that feel impossible to overcome. But I want you to hold on to this image of God providing water to Elijah in the wilderness, because it's a powerful reminder that no matter how dry, how barren, how hopeless your situation might seem, God is there. Offer you that same life-giving water, that same source of strength and renewal. He sees you in your weariness. He understands your pain, and he's reaching out to you, offering you comfort, rest, and a way forward. And you know what's so amazing about God's provision? It's not just about meeting our needs right now in this moment, It's about giving us what we need for the journey ahead, equipping us with the strength and resources to really fulfill our purpose, overcome those challenges, and walk in victory, like really walk in victory. And that's exactly what happened with Elijah, After God refreshed and strengthened him, he gave him new instructions, basically told him to get back out there and continue his mission. Can you imagine? Like Elijah was ready to give up, to hide in that cave forever. But God's like, nope, not done with you yet. There's still work to do. People need to hear this message. There's a purpose for you. You're still here for a reason. And I think that same message applies to us today, We might feel like giving up, like we've hit a wall and can't go any further. But God's saying, get up, keep moving. I'm not finished with you yet. He's got a plan for your life, a purpose that's bigger than you can even imagine. And he's given you everything you need to actually live it out. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, sure, God's got this plan for my life. But what is it? How am I supposed to know? And those are good questions, totally valid. But here's the thing. We don't have to have it all figured out right now. We don't need all the answers all at once. God doesn't expect us to be perfect or to know everything. He just wants us to take that first step, to move forward with faith, trusting that he'll guide us along the way. He'll show us his plan for our lives, one step at a time. As we walk with him and listen to his voice, he'll give us the wisdom, the guidance, and the strength we need for each part of the journey. Now, I want to go back to Elijah's story for a minute, because there's something else here, a really important lesson, I think, especially when we're feeling weary and discouraged. And that is, God often works in these quiet, subtle ways. He's not always about fireworks and big announcements. Sometimes he speaks in a whisper, a gentle nudge, a seemingly small event. But if we're not paying attention, we might miss it. Remember how God met Elijah in the cave? It wasn't in a whirlwind or a firestorm. It was in a still small voice, a gentle whisper. And that's how he often works in our lives too. He's in those quiet moments of reflection, the unexpected kindnesses, the beauty of nature. He's in those whispers in our hearts, our intuition, the synchronicities that feel almost too perfect to be coincidence. So how do we tune in to that still small voice? How do we see God's hand in our lives? It starts with being present, being still, quieting our minds, and opening our hearts to his presence. It's about making time to pray, to think about his word, and listen to that inner voice that speaks truth and guides us. We got to pay attention to the details, the small things that could actually be divine appointments orchestrated by God to lead us in the right direction. It's easy to get swept up in the craziness of life, to be so focused on our to-do lists and goals that we miss the subtle ways God's trying to connect with us. But if we can just slow down, make space for silence and reflection, we'll be amazed at how clearly he speaks, how gently he guides, and how powerfully he works in our lives. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, okay, that's great, but my problems are huge. I need more than a whisper. I need a miracle. And I hear you. I really do. There have been times when I've felt that way too, facing a mountain of a problem, a situation that felt completely hopeless. And I've cried out to God, I need a miracle. I need you to step in and do something big. But here's the thing about miracles. They often look a lot like ordinary events. Think about it. The parting of the Red Sea, the feeding of the 5,000, the resurrection of Jesus. Those were extraordinary events, no doubt. But they happened because everyday people chose to believe, to trust, and to act with faith. And that's my challenge to you today. Don't underestimate the power of the ordinary. Don't dismiss those small, seemingly insignificant moments as just coincidence or chance. God's working in your life right now, even if you can't see it. He's moving things, opening doors, arranging circumstances in ways you couldn't imagine. Your miracle might not be flashy or dramatic, but it'll come. It might be a phone call you weren't expecting, a random encounter that leads to a new opportunity, a sudden flash of insight that gives you the clarity you've been searching for. The key is to be open, to be aware, and to trust that God is at work, even in the midst of the mundane. You know that water you drank earlier? That wasn't just symbolic. It was a physical action that nourished your body and reminded you of God's constant presence. Well, the actions you take, no matter how small, can nourish your soul and strengthen your faith in the same way. It's like in Elijah's story. Remember how he just wanted to give up? He felt like he couldn't go on another step. And right then, when he was at his absolute lowest, God sent him an angel, with food and water, gave him the strength to keep going, and told him to get up, go back to where he came from. Why? Because God wasn't done with him yet. And here's the thing. He's not done with you either. You might be exhausted, worn down, feel like you've given everything you've got. But God's saying, I'm not finished with you. There's still work to be done. Victories to win, a purpose for you to fulfill. So don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up on God's plan for your life, because he hasn't given up on you. He's still working. He's still fighting for you. And he's still calling you to be the amazing person he created you to be. Hold on to that truth. Let it sink in. You see, we've been talking about Elijah and how he found strength when he wanted to quit. And I've been encouraging you to really see God's presence in your own life, to recognize how he's working behind the scenes, even when it feels like nothing's happening. But here's the question. What do we do with that? How do we take that truth and actually put it into action? Well, I think the first step is to just be real with where you are right now. Don't try to pretend you're not tired or discouraged or afraid. God already knows how you feel. He's not scared of your emotions. He wants to meet you right where you're at. So take a moment to be honest with yourself and with God. Tell him how you're feeling. Pour out your heart and then listen. Listen for that still small voice, whispering words of comfort, encouragement, direction. The next step is to choose faith over fear. It's so easy to let fear take over. Let it make our decisions for us, to let it limit us. But God is calling us to something bigger. He's calling us to step out in faith, to trust him even when it doesn't make sense, and to believe he's working everything out for good. It might feel scary. I get it. But remember, you're not alone. God is with you. He's your strength, your shield, your guide. He'll never leave you. He'll never let you down. And finally, I want to encourage you to take action. Faith without action is it's just not enough. It's not enough to just believe in God. We got to live it out, That means obeying his word, serving others, using our gifts and talents to make a difference in the world. It might be something small, like saying a kind word to someone who needs it, or volunteering at a local charity. Or it could be something big, like starting that business you've always dreamed of, going back to school, pursuing a passion. The important thing is to take that step, to move forward with faith, trusting that God will be there every step of the way. Remember that water you drank earlier? It wasn't just a symbolic act. It was physical. It nourished your body and reminded you of God's constant presence. In the same way, the actions you take, no matter how small, they can nourish your soul and strengthen your faith. So here's what I'll leave you with. What step are you going to take today? What action, big or small, will move you closer to the life God has planned for you? Don't wait for the perfect time or the perfect opportunity. The time is now. Take that step. Trust God and watch Him do amazing things in your life.